What is up? It's a Figure Hunter, and we have a little bit of a doozy of a review for you today. So I have basically just completed 75 days of 75 workouts, doing a version of the Hard 75, and I've been using all the primary platforms, Garmin, Polar, Suunto, and Whoop, to track my fitness development over 75 days. So we're gonna look to see who provides the clearest information or the clearest in-depth view of how the fitness has grown over that period of time, over an increased training regimen, and who offers the most value, in my opinion, from a training load tracking, from a fitness development tracking, from a analytical aspect factor across those four platforms. So if you like this review, please give it a thumbs up and please consider subscribing for more, lots more good reviews on the way. And I don't have like a prolonged script. We're just going to dive into each of the platforms separately and in no particular order. So what the premise is that 75 days ago I started a version of what's called the Hard 75, and it includes a number of different changes to your lifestyle. So the most basic change is that you work out every day for an hour and a half. It doesn't have to be the same level of strenuousness across the hour and a half. So typically I would do an hour to an hour and 15 minutes of workout, and then 15 to 30 minutes of just a walk at night. And it involves, drinking over a gallon of water a day. It involves making a change to your diet of your choice. And my change to my diet was no sugar, no wheat, and no pasta, and 175 grams of protein intake on average per day, coupled with intermittent fasting 3 days a week of at least 18 to 20 hours. So that was the physiological change. And so I've been able to see, like, on average, my workouts are probably 3 to 4 days, maybe 5 days of CrossFit with maybe a day off and maybe a day of light exercise. And now I'm looking at basically 6 days a week of CrossFit with a lighter day, just doing minor aerobic activities or minor, gym equipment, simple stuff, or maybe a long bike ride on a 7th day, coupled, having that same 1.5 hour goal of those two aspects that I just mentioned. So I really have wanted to see which of these platforms would pick up on the change, which of them would display it, which would then represent it. I am not a runner. I obviously do reviews for the CrossFit and high intensity interval type of training aspects that are out there versus all the running, swimming, and biking reviews that are out there. So I wanted to see which platform would work for those doing non-running, biking, and swimming type of exercise as their primary mode, and which of them would clearly display a change in intensity or a change in the amount of workout that you're putting in, coupled with which ones might actually display an overall change in your fitness as you're eating better alongside working out more and drinking a gallon of water a day and all those types of things. So we're going to dive into each of these, and that is the basic thing we're looking for. So 3 simple things. Which one best illustrates fitness development and continual growth across a fitness spectrum? Which one of them provides the broadest set of analytical factors or aspects you could see and understand about your physiological growth or your fitness development? And lastly, which summarizes all this information in the most clear or actionable method or overview, perspective. I am not looking at wellness. I'm not looking at sleep aspects that tie in, or I'm not looking at heart rate variability changes per se. We're just going to look at each of the platforms. So without further ado, we're going to dive into the first platform, and the first platform is Whoop. And I'm going to say out of the gate that I don't have positive things to say about the device overall, and that's going to come up in a re-review of the Whoop device now that I've tested or used it for 45 days. It hasn't been the whole 75 days. I guess it's been about 60 of the 75 or 50 of the 75. So either way, the device itself is the most problematic device I have ever tested across every platform ever. As far as connectivity, it's just constantly resetting it, constantly turning my phone off and turning it back on for it to get the app to see the device and sync the data. So we're going to dive into Whoop first. So let's take a look. All right, so first up we have Whoop. This is the basic landing page where it shows your sleep, your workout of the day, your overall daily strain, and recovery. So we're just going to look at what it shows about a workout. So you can see you have one activity. When you go into the workout activity, it just shows heart rate. So a little bit one-dimensional, or I would say very one-dimensional. So it's just basically tracking, literally like it says, your strain from that workout. and on a scale of 0 to 21. And you can see that it's giving you like a score, and it tells you how much time was spent in the zones, but you don't get a zone chart. You don't get to see anything that specifically shows you the literal amount of time in your heart rate zones, at least here. So you can also see your averages across the week, like your level of strain, but this is a daily number. So again, a big hang up I have is this is not your workout intensity number from that training session. It's actually a combination of the training session coupled with any other types of strain you did that day. So if you did a bunch of yard work and then did a really soft workout, your fitness didn't probably grow from the yard work, but at the same time, it's going to look like your fitness grew from the level of strain score. And then behind all this, you can go into longer term analytics. So you can look at the weekly report. So the weekly report shows basically, one thing that's interesting about this, I did this whole, I'm going to go re-review, is that I switched to using the Whoop body and it failed to track sleep. So I'm going to do a whole review of this, but you see 4 strain scores and 4 sleep scores, and I had 7 days of sleep and 7 days of workouts. Well, technically not as much because it's only, I guess, yeah, there's 7 days. I should have counted all of them. But you can see just your average strain daily versus last week's average strain. None of this really helps me. None of this to me is enough clarity of information. You can see the average strain of the Box Fitness or CrossFit workouts this week versus last week, so it's a little bit better. But that's the only place you could see that I strained a little bit more in the average workouts this week versus last week. And then the last thing is the monthly report. I'm not going to push the button here because it's so comprehensive. We have to look at it in a different scale. So mostly it's focused on sleep in the beginning, lots of sleep metrics, and then the training breakdown. So you can see the amount of strain based on the day of the week. And Saturday I typically did the lighter strain type stuff, and some of that on Sundays, and switching it back and forth a little bit. But you can see the number, the number of activities, average activities, all those types of details in the strain by day, what days you strained the most. But again, this doesn't necessarily tell me how my training is developing over time. So most of this stuff is, this is probably one of the useful aspects of it, not the strain duration chart, but the heart rate zones, like how much time in the last month you're out, you accumulated in the heart rate zone. So obviously if you're pushing your fitness higher, you want to accumulate more time in the heart rate zones, although this doesn't give you a month-by-month comparison of how much time you spent in the higher heart rate zones than you did in the last month. Now I only got one report, so maybe it's going to show it. These things, I feel like this is sort of useless pictorial representation of strain recovery and sleep performance. And then the other thing that is slightly helpful, but it's based too much on recovery, is this training behavior, which looks like, oh gosh, this is a training load weight. It's showing you your training load over time. No, it's actually showing you the amount of strain relative to the amount of recovery. So if it says overreaching, it's not because you are pushing your body harder, it's just because you pushed your body on average more that day than your recovery said you should push yourself. So that's not training development, in my opinion. That's an overweight towards it's saying your fitness is based on your recovery, which isn't always the case. And then the physiological response is one of the useful aspects of this report, because you can see the impact of training on your heart rate variability and your resting heart rate, which is an increase in health. This doesn't necessarily fall into what we're looking at here in this analysis or this review, because I want to see my training load and my fitness development. This is showing my health development, and many people will probably argue that this is showing fitness development, but it's just not summarizing it in a metric necessarily related to it. So that is the monthly report, mental health, and so that is the Whoop device. Let's come back together. So there you have it. There's the overview of the Whoop, and all the different features and different aspects. From what I see on the con side, obviously, like I mentioned in the beginning, the device is very problematic. It does not stay connected to the app, and it requires a multitude of steps to try to get it to reconnect, to start picking up data, to start syncing workouts. It has just been headache after headache with the device. So that's a major con. This device doesn't work great. But as far as overall, the overall simplicity of the strain score on a daily basis and the overall simplicity of just your strain over the course of days, although it does show, like if you're your averages are changing on the weekly report. It does show the trends there. A lot of it is coupled with your recovery level for the amount of strain. And so some of those metrics and reports say you're just working out too hard for the quality of sleep you got, rather than working out too hard for your overall fitness development or working out in a way that's pushing your fitness higher. So some of the pros obviously is that it does have a number of different physiological metrics that it's looking at when it comes to just your overall wellness. And the monthly report I found to be useful and have some information in it. It summarizes everything in a very clear and concise way. But at the end of the day, I felt like the Whoop did not nearly provide as much value. And in what I'm sharing now with all these different apps and features, I'm not actually going in particular order from worst to best, but I am just going to start with Whoop just out of the gate. So there was not enough training load information. There were charts to see if my load relative to my recovery was in line, but that's not helping me necessarily understand my fitness development. I could see if my weekly average of daily strain was the same as the daily average from the last week, but again, it didn't give me enough clarity into my overall training, other than the one positive aspect on the monthly report is so you could see the physiological benefits of better training in your heart rate variability going up or your resting heart rate going down. So that is the Whoop. So next up is the Suunto, and we're just going to dive right into the Suunto app. Okay, so this is what the Suunto app looks like. This is actually the sports tracker app, long story there. But this is what the Suunto app will look like, where you just have your workout summary. And in the summary section, it's going to give you the impact of that workout. The only two pieces of information, if you're doing a non-running, non-biking type of workout, is that recovery in the middle and the training stress score. So the stress score is your basic load, your cardiovascular strain from the workout. The recovery time here is never accurate. It is based on, I don't know how they're basing it, but it's just not right, because it's always half of what many other devices are saying my workout should be, but then you have your heart rate zones here, but you can see how much time was accumulated by heart rate zone, which is still useful information workout to workout. And then the main thing that I found useful is this progress bar in the top left. This is your training development over time. So at the top, it tells you what zone you're in, whether you're falling behind, whether you're maintaining, which is what keeping fit, or you're making progress, or you're overdoing it. And it's based on a number of different scores, and you can click on any of these and it's going to tell you what the definitions are. But as many times as I've read it, it's still, the verbiage doesn't match intuitive understanding of it, but the charts still are what they are. The main thing on the top is to see that black line, the fitness line on the top chart. The form line on the bottom just shows if your overall load in recent times is enough to continue to grow your fitness line up above. So, and then it's counterintuitive, because the form line, the more negative you are, the more you are actually growing your fitness line in the chart above. So it shouldn't look like that. It should, in my opinion, should be reversed that. It should just be upside down. But the fitness line, because you can go from 8 weeks and you can go to 8 months and 13 months. But when you think about 10.5 weeks of much more increased training, you would think of your fitness development increasing over that whole period of time, like it shows here. The fitness line on the top, so you can see you need to break down the numbers, but that black line on the top chart is my fitness development line. And perfectly and clearly displayed, even if some of the metrics and the words are counterintuitive or not clear to understand, that's a clear picture of what's happened over the last 75 days, 10.5 weeks, is my fitness has grown and evolved like that hill. And what you can look at in the 8 weeks is that it's sort of leveled out. You can see this one change in my fatigue score with the Murph workout and the prep for the Murph workout, with a big training stress score of 100 that day, but 104 the day before. You can see just the overall fatigue line was shooting up. But you look at it, my fitness didn't come down the week following. So it did decline to 49 from 50, but it in general is showing maintaining fitness despite having a really hard training week and going to a medium hard training week. And that's how it should display. So really clear here, and you can dive into any of these pieces of information to get more. But that is the Suunto app. So looking at the cons first and just looking at a simple summary, this con of how it explains training load and fitness development over time is how it explains it is complex. It is still, you know, I am 75 days into it. I'm actually much more than that into using it and tracking my fitness alongside it. And I still feel like it is not easy just to glean the information and absorb it. I've said this in the midpoint review for this whole 75-day process, and I'm saying it again now. It's too complex. And then the other physiological metrics that are supplied by Suunto and not by Training Peaks are relatively worthless. So the one being, and the one only, especially if you're not doing running, if you're just doing CrossFit or high intensity interval training or some other training metric, is the recovery time. The recovery time is always well below what it should be. It's always at least half, and you can take it and just multiply it times 2 and use that as a baseline, but still not enough. Now, what are the positives? Now, the detailed metrics are very excellent. The metrics, I think, are based on a physiological science, and I think Training Peaks is nailing it as far as how you can see the fitness develop over time. You can see your fitness grow over time and not necessarily overly shrink based on a decrease in training load, but still a maintaining of your fitness. So again, you should be able to maintain your fitness even if you're taking off some of the load from like the week when I did the Murph workout and it peaked all my metrics across a number of platforms. It shouldn't be that the next week, because I don't have that same level of strain, that it looks like my fitness is going down. They did not do that. And so it is, the most felt accuracy from just overall fitness development, even if it's not the most clearly displayed. So next up is Polar. So let's dive into the Polar platform and then come back together and talk about it. Okay, Polar. So we're going to skip over some of the generic aspects of Polar, and we're going to go right to the calendar. You can see that listed in the bottom icon. This is the calendar of your workouts for the week, and it just shows you can dive into any of them. When you go into an individual workout, you just get a bunch of simple information. The main important information is this Training Load Pro, where it gives you this cardio load. It shows you a score of 77 and how many dots out of 5 you completed. And if you hit all 5, then you're really, you hit your cardiovascular system really hard that day. You can see your heart rate zones down here to be able to track how much time you spent in each zone. And you get a rate of perceived exertion, but that to me doesn't apply to anything worthwhile. So when you come back here, one thing that's nice about Polar is you have this summary of training for the week at the top. I don't necessarily care about duration. I don't necessarily care about calories burned, but you can see the time spent per zone week to week. You can go back in time. You can see the weeks where you really pushed your level of fitness maybe higher through the higher level zone work or time spent in higher level zones. And you can see when you maybe didn't. And you can track your sort of amount of time, and you could set a goal for how much time you want to hit in the zone 5, 90 to 100% of max heart rate. And that could help you to see, because as you get more fit, it's harder to push your heart into the higher heart rate zones. So it means you have to continue to push yourself up there, even though your body has acclimated to more training. So it helps you to see if your fitness is potentially being pushed in that metric. And then when you see this where it says cardio load in the middle and it says maintaining, so this is your summary for the week, and it changes throughout the week, and then it obviously summarizes at the end of the week. This is a maintaining week. And you can see your fitness across time. It's based on 3 components. So every day when you do a workout, you get what's called that red dot where it says cardio load for the day. This is the amount that day you put strain on your heart cardiovascularly. The purple strain score is your average daily load over the last 7 days. So take them all up, add them all up over the last 7 days, divide by 7, and that's your average. And then the tolerance, the blue, is the same calculation over 28 days. Add up all your strains over the last 28 days, divide them by 28, and you will get your tolerance score. And the concept with Polar here is that if your strain score stays or goes above your tolerance score, then you're building your fitness. But what you can see at times is if you have one workout like here is the Murph workout, ultra high load cardio load, And then even the next day, it actually was a really hard workout, which just was not nice from the gym owner to, prescribe that. But either way, you can see high cardio load scores. So I had 2 really hard workouts back to back, and maybe the second one was just a higher cardio load because my body was severely fatigued. But either way, so you can see my strain, that purple line across, just look at the purple line across the top, is my 7-day average was peaking out and pulling my 28-day average up. And then you go into a week like this, when my strain scores 77 is a good strain score. It's still 4 out of 5 stars. Same here, 77, 4 out of 5 stars. It's still a good week. But, and I worked out on Monday, but it was just a lighter workout. I didn't even track it. But you look, and it looks like my fitness has gone down. You can see the decline in my fitness averages going down simply because it is averaging out these 2 hard workouts. And when those drop off the 7-day average, it says, oh, look at that purple line. Your purple line is bad. You're doing bad this week. You're in detraining, which is what it's telling me down below, which is not necessarily, it's just relative to the next week. But one thing that's great about Polar is you can hit the expand button and it's changing over a long periods of time. So I started this on March 27th, so I'll put that all the way at the left. So now you can see the blue line did increase. So Polar captured the growth of fitness and it captured that expansion phase for about 5 to 6 weeks. But then you can see it sort of leveled off. And in my training, I am maintaining the same level of exertion. You can even see like the Murph workout. You can see a lot of red lines that persisted even after the blue line, that little water line, which is my 28-day moving average, which also could be viewed as my fitness level. Even though the red lines are still pretty high, my fitness looks like it has a general decline over the midpoint of these weeks. And especially towards the last week when those big strain days fell off the average of the 7. So all that's just to say that it did not correctly capture as perfectly the visual display of fitness growth and maintenance, maintaining that fitness, because my fitness has been maintained, but here it would look like it's declined a little bit over the last few days when my workout regimen has been just as difficult. So that is the Polar lineup. All right, so there's the Polar platform. The Polar is a little bit easy and straightforward to talk about. It's got a simple calculation metric for how it's calculating your fitness development, which is your 28-day average versus the 7-day average is your last week of training, pushing your averages up across 4 weeks of training. And you can see just a simple workout score and labeled as cardio load. So the con of the Polar system is that it is just overly simple. It's relatively one-dimensional. It doesn't provide a lot of detail. It doesn't reply to, obviously, any recovery time. And as we can see, even though my workout intensity changed from like a really hard week of the prep for Murph and then the Murph execution, followed by, not as hard as the Murph workout type of week, it looks like my fitness went down when that in fact is probably not physiologically the case. But the pros for Polar is that it's just simple. It's obviously, it's the best display of your workouts over time and those simple variables over time. So be them what they may be in the simplicity, you can at least see it across a big beautiful landscape, and you can see your fitness across time or your overall trends 7 days and 28 days over a period of time, coupled with the single day strain levels. So that is the Polar. So last up, we're going to look at Garmin. So let's dive in. All right, so this one's Garmin, and this one has a lot to look at. So the most simple of which, I just turned over midnight, so things just get funky over midnight. My training status, this will usually be on the main landing page in that summary screen you just saw. And you can see basically your VO2 max, your load, your heat acclimation, but the top 2 are the primary metrics. Now, a lot of what you see in the middle where it says maintaining is based on whether my VO2 max is staying the same or going up, and in line with my load levels staying the same or going up or going down. So it is not always helpful because it's really tagged to your VO2 max going up or going down. So the times when I've seen it say unproductive, It wasn't my training backed off. It wasn't that my fitness was getting weaker in any way, shape, or form. It's just that my running VO2 max score went down, and it's just too tied to that. But you can look at your load, and this was the Instinct 2 that I wore for the broad part of this period of time. So you can see, you know, it's actually showing a little too much highly aerobic, which tends to happen with CrossFit. But here's something that's different than all the others. It's saying, yes, you had training load, but what categories of training were you hitting your body physiologically, whether it was anaerobic, highly aerobic, or lowly aerobic, and it gives you a range to set as a goal so that you can be evolving your fitness with some specificity. You can go to the exercise load tab, and you can see this is your cardiovascular strain score. It's the same thing as the cardio load score on the polar system, is the same thing as the training stress score on the Suunto system, but you can see all the same numbers. You know, the numbers are a little bit small. I can't click on the chart. Oh yes, I can. Never mind. So you can see like the Murph day. So like ultra high aerobic, highly aerobic. You know, it just sort of overskewed all the numbers. But you can see what level of load you put on your body over a period of time in the last 4 weeks, and you can see the 4 weeks before, and you can see the 4 weeks before that, and it is just displaying it also by type. And then you see your 7-day load. This is what they call acute training load. The green is the range that you want to stay in to maintain, and it's just sort of saying optimal. It cut off because I switched to a new watch, and I'd have to show you a whole different thing. But that's the bummer about Garmin, is that it's not a continuous line if you switch to a new watch. You can see where it sat across the time period before, and then even leading up to the beginning of the training itself. Now, this doesn't clearly represent or doesn't show that big smooth graph of training load increasing over time. So if you look at it from when I started on the 27th, it just looks like, oh, I went downhill from there, and I don't even know what was the cause of that. And then I spiked up. I don't even know what these are because I just started working out 7 days a week, 6 of them being CrossFit. So it's not a very clear representation, but it is still a representation of what range you want to stay in versus the load you want to have. The other thing that's interesting about Garmin, when you look at the types of information they supply, is that you get your aerobic and anaerobic training effect workout by workout. So for example, you look at the workout today, it said I hit 2.7, so anything above 2.5 is, you know, going to help grow some of your fitness. Anything below that is going to not quite push your fitness to the next level. So you could see here, I hit the green. So anything above 3 is in the green. You're really pushing your aerobic capacity. So it's showing you if you are really growing your aerobic or anaerobic capacity workout to workout. And you can see it across time. So you can see it across many, you know, 4-week period of time, and you can even go back. But you can see one of the things that I have a hard time with Garmin, and this is sort of the summary of my point, is if you look across from March 20th, my overall average was kind of close to 3, which means I was growing my aerobic capacity throughout the whole 4-week period. Here, it was a little bit even more than 3. Probably an average of just barely above 3, where I'm definitely growing my aerobic capacity. Here, the average is probably a little bit. It was a couple of days where I had a chest strap failure, so it didn't pick up a number, and maybe the aerobic load was low because it was a soft day, because I was just doing that one day where I took it easier. But I'd say it's still right around 3. And so across this whole time span of all these weeks, I'm hitting kind of like an average of 3. But there's nowhere in the app where it shows me that my fitness grew. It just shows me, like if you look at the training load, it just shows that my range was sort of still in the range. So I could know that, okay, well, if I'm in the range, then I'm maintaining my fitness and maybe growing my fitness. But there's no clear indicator of what my fitness development has looked like, a big pretty chart. So that is the Garmin in summary, and that's the sort of simple summary of all the different aspects. Now there's a bunch of different physiological metrics that are now coming down the pipe that are really, really, really cool. So there's the training status there as it reappeared now that it's past midnight a little bit further. So with that, that's Garmin. Okay, so looking at Garmin, just let's jump into it. What are the cons out of the gate? The training load visibility, or just is not great. It gives you a good training load score, or your acute load over the last 7 days, coupled with a range of what it should be in to maintain fitness, but it's just not nearly as good as some of the visual displays of some of the other manufacturers. Obviously, there's no metric, and this is the biggest hang-up I have with Garmin, is there's no metric for fitness development. So obviously, a lot of their training platform is based on VO2 development, VO2 growth, and even their training status. I did a whole review of it. It's one of the videos you can see on my channel, and maybe I'll post it in the description below. But I basically did a whole review of how the fitness status, which is your recommendation for whether you're growing or whether you're falling behind, whether you're maintaining, whether you're peaking before a race, is all based on VO2 max. And VO2 max is only taken in a run, in a GPS-linked run, or a cycling. You can get a biking VO2 max if you have a foot pedal to track the power or something like that. I don't know exactly, but yes, foot pedal to track the power. So there's no continuous training load across multiple watches. That's obviously a problem for me in reviewing some of the new 955 and 255 watches that just came out. So you can't really see your big pretty graph over a long spectrum of time if you're a reviewer like me and you use different devices. But on the pro side, they're definitely the most detailed. Definitely the most detailed in the number of physiological aspects you can look at. They're the only one of these 4 platforms that shows the aerobic and anaerobic training effect, workout to workout, so you can see if that particular workout had an impact on you aerobically. You can see your recovery time, and their recovery time is not one-dimensional just based on the rigor of that one workout. It's based on the sleep quality the night before, it's based on your body battery the day before, and it's based on the rigor of that workout as well. And then the training load, you can obviously see your workout scores, your sort of cardiovascular load from that one workout, which would correlate to what Polar gives you, but which is the training stress score of the Suunto family, which is the sort of the strain score of the Whoop family. So it's doing the same thing, but it's also giving you that training effect on the aerobic and anaerobic side, as well as taking the load and telling you what load type it really falls into, whether it's highly aerobic, lowly aerobic, or anaerobic, so that you have even more information. So, back to the con for a second, and the con is they have so much information that you do have to look in a multiple of places, and they could do a much better job summarizing it all and a much better job culminating it all into how your fitness is growing, how your fitness is developing over time. So with that, let's talk about who the real loser up to the winner is, and what I feel like it has the most simple value for tracking your fitness development over a prolonged period of time when there's been an overall change in your approach to exercise as well as diet. So with that, let's talk. All right, so in summary, from worst to best in what just sort of looks at the physiological things. So think about this again, just as you back up. 75 days ago, I was doing 3 to 4 workouts a week in the CrossFit realm of more intensity, and then maybe 1 or 2 workouts covering like 5 or 6 days total in 1 or 2 sort of lighter workouts, just maybe, on a longer ride on a bike, or, doing some basic fitness stuff in a small little community gym. But now going to 6 days of CrossFit, increasing the amount of workout time, having a much higher dedicated level to training, as well as to eating differently, taking out sugar, taking out wheat, taking out pasta, drinking over a gallon of water. I think my average is about 1.5 gallons of water a day over the last 75 days. Which one showed me the overall impact to my fitness level? So the least, the worst, the bottom, in my opinion, was the Whoop device, not just because of the technical difficulties that I had in using the device itself, but because it took a lot of physiological stuff, but it really steers it all to the recovery side and to the relative strain versus the recovery. And you cannot break out the workouts necessarily as easily. It does come up in like the weekly report or the monthly report. You can see how much strain you spent per workout in different categories, but to me, it didn't summarize it in a fitness development displayed fashion or a training load overall perspective fashion. And that to me was the least helpful for seeing my fitness development over a prolonged period of time where my training intensity went up, other than just seeing average week to week trainings. But if you look at all those scores, it looks like I trained a little bit less over 1 week over the others, but I just couldn't stand back and see that, like, oh, my fitness did grow over this period of time, when I know in fact my fitness did grow over that period of time from multiple factors. Second place, or third place, I should say, is Polar. Polar is really beautiful when it comes to simplicity. You know, if you're looking for an inexpensive watch, the Polar Pacer, $200. If you're not a big runner and you're just doing CrossFit or it's really a great solution because it takes all these simple metrics and it ties it into an inexpensive watch and provides all that value that we just saw. But on the flip side, it was too simple. And what I noticed as the weeks went on, especially when I had a high cardio load week or high strain week or a high fitness week with the prep for Murph and then the Murph execution, was that it looked like my fitness had declined in more of a felt way when I really don't feel like my fitness declined. It just wasn't like peaking out. So if my 28-day number was over average because of one hard week and then my 7-day number was a little bit low, it just is now continually telling me that I'm detraining, which is not necessarily the case physiologically. Third place, and now getting, oh God, second place. 4, 3, 2, 1. Get my order right. Second place is Garmin. So Garmin, I feel like they have the broadest set of physiological things you could look into and seeing your fitness across a number of levels. You can see your training effect on the aerobic side. You can see your training load over time, similar to some of the things, even if it's not as pretty. You can see multiple other factors, and I do think they're on the cutting edge and the industry leader when it comes to developing multiple factors when it comes to your training and your wellness at the same time. I do think because they see some of those things like the individual workouts effect on your aerobic capacity or your aerobic development, or the training load type, like what kind of overweight you have in either too lowly aerobic or too high aerobic or not, too much anaerobic, it gives you much more insight and actionable things you can say, I'm going to dial it down or dial it up and help my overall fitness grow in a different way rather than just looking at pure loads. So they give you more clarity. And the winner of this particular aspect and facet is Suunto. So I think Suunto with Training Peaks, and I don't necessarily give any credit to Suunto other than the fact that they hired Training Peaks to do their analytical aspects. It was in simple form, like there's a lot that I think is missing in the Suunto platform if you're looking at just the watches and the comprehensive set of offerings. But if you just look at what Training Peaks is providing, and you could get Training Peaks probably on your own on an app. Either way, what you see is that my fitness, it clearly went up and it stayed up even though there was some change in my training intensity these last few weeks with Murph. Some change, my fitness didn't decline sharply, so it shows that they are maintaining a more wholesome, holistic, appropriate level of fitness maintenance when there's just a sharp change week to a week when you had just a really high intensity week. And that is what I believe is the truth about what happened. It's a believe, you can see the development, which is what I feel like has happened over the last 75 days, 10 and a half weeks. And you can see it maintained even though in the short term, some short-term change one week to the next maybe had a difference, but it didn't in any way mean that I was losing my fitness capabilities or my level of fitness. So with that is the summary of the 4 major platforms when it comes to an extensive long-term physiological change, diet change, health change across multiple factors, but in simple form, just adding a higher level of training output to the diet aspects over a long period of time. So please let me know what you think in the comments below. One last thing I'll say before totally closing out this video, I'm just going to shove this segment in there, is that what I'm sharing today is not the determinant for what watch you should buy exactly, because there are many different features and different customization capabilities, different screen quality, different visibility, different build quality, design. There's so many different features that this is just one subset, but it in no way is recommending which watch you should go with. Like if you were just asking me directly and simply which watch family has the broadest breadth of all of it, it goes with Garmin for sure, because they're the industry leader across a number of platforms right now. Even if their training load analysis doesn't look as pretty or come out as visibly useful, it's still, they are they're way far down the road from everybody else when it comes to heart rate variability and sleep and all these different functions, and combining them all in some way that's actionable and developing new and special different metrics. So just take that with a grain of salt. I just wanted to throw that in there because I don't want to necessarily sway your next major purchase by this one aspect. I just shared this whole one aspect as sort of just like an analytical aspect or analytical piece of a period of time in my life and my training, and what different platforms provide to the end user in that specific facet. So that's all I'm going to say about that. So that's the review for today. It's a Figure Hunter. Thanks so much for watching.